All right, let's dive right in. Today, we are tackling a world-class framework for strategic planning. And look, if you've ever felt like your marketing efforts are just a series of disconnected tactics, this framework is the antidote you've been searching for. It gives you a logical, repeatable process that just plain works. So, what exactly is SOSTAC? Well, it's not just another business acronym to remember, I promise. Think of it as a comprehensive system that pulls together all the core parts of management. Planning, organizing, leading, and controlling. It's designed to swap guesswork for a clear scientific methodology, which, as you can imagine, leads to much more consistent and reliable results over the long haul. So, here's our game plan. We'll kick things off with the system's core structure. Then we'll walk through the analysis and strategy phases. After that, we'll cover execution and control, and we'll wrap up with some real practical advice on how to apply this like a seasoned consultant. Okay, first things first. Let's break down the architecture of the system. It's built on 6 really logical components that, when you use them together, create this incredibly powerful engine to guide you from wherever you are right now to where you want to be. As you can see, these 6 steps form a complete loop. It's a full circle. You start with analysis, you define your destination, you build the strategic bridge to get there, you detail the exact steps, you assign the work, and then, this is crucial, you measure the results to feed right back into the start of the process. So this isn't a one-time plan. Think of it as a continuous improvement cycle. All right, let's dig into that critical first phase. You can't really chart a course to a new destination without knowing your exact starting point, right? This part is all about building a rock-solid foundation through some serious, rigorous analysis and setting crystal-clear goals. Your situation analysis is basically a full environmental scan. You use SWOT to get a handle on your internal capabilities versus what's happening in the external market. You use PESTLE analysis to understand those big macro trends you just can't control. That's political, economic, social, technological, legal, and environmental factors. Then you really zero in on your competitors to find their weaknesses, and you audit your target market to create these super detailed profiles or personas of your ideal customers. Seriously, this isn't optional. It's the absolute bedrock of your entire strategy. So once you know where you are, you have to define precisely where you're going. And I'm not talking about vague wishes like increase sales. No way. This is about defining the end game, your ultimate mission. You then translate that into SMART goals: specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time-based. And crucially, you define the KPIs that are going to tell you without a shadow of a doubt if you're winning or not. Okay, so we've got our starting point, and we've got our destination. This next phase, it's all about designing the bridge that connects the two. This is where the big picture thinking really starts to meet on-the-ground action. This slide really gets to the heart of what strategy actually means in this whole context. It's not about the individual actions you take. It's the high-level game plan. It answers the one big question: how are we going to win? It's all about positioning yourself in a unique, defensible space inside your customer's mind. And this idea is just perfectly captured by this quote from Al Ries and Jack Trout. I mean, think about it. You could have the best product in the world, but if a competitor owns the perception of quality or speed in the customer's mind, you're already playing from behind. Strategy is the art of winning that battle of perceptions. So if strategy is the recipe, then tactics are the specific ingredients you see right here. This includes the classic marketing mix: product, price, place, and promotion, and your content strategy. That might involve creating content that directly answers customer questions, a practice we call answer engine optimization. And finally, it's about selecting your channels, deciding where to put your energy to get the absolute best results. A brilliant strategy and a bunch of clever tactics are completely useless if they aren't executed with discipline. This phase is all about making the plan a reality and, just as importantly, building the systems to make sure it's actually working. The action plan is where we get granular. It's not enough just to say, we'll create content. You need a responsibility matrix that makes it totally clear who does what. You need campaign calendars to synchronize every single moving part. And you absolutely need standard operating procedures, or SOPs, so that your execution is consistent and scalable. This is where your strategy becomes disciplined, everyday work. And finally, we close the loop with control. This is the crucial feedback system. You're constantly measuring performance data and feeding it right back into your strategy. You're using ROI reporting to see what's really working and, let's be honest, what isn't.
This allows for continuous optimization through things like quarterly reviews, which gives you the strategic agility to adapt in today's fast-moving markets.
So, we get the 6 components now. But knowing the theory is one thing. Applying it effectively is a whole different ballgame. Let's shift gears a bit and put on our consultant's hat and look at how to actually implement this framework for maximum impact.
This brings us to a really important question. How do we do this the right way? How do we avoid just filling out a template and instead make it a living, breathing guide for our entire organization?
Well, here are 4 core principles for you. First, reverse engineer from your end goal. Second, conduct an intensive analysis to find that vital few, the 20% of benefits that truly drive 80% of the buying decision. Third, make sure your value proposition directly bridges the gap between your customer's pain and their desired transformation. And finally, stay agile. Use a framework like the OODA loop, that's observe, orient, decide, and act, to create a really rapid cycle for making effective decisions in a constantly changing environment.
Now, just as important as knowing what to do is knowing what not to do. So many brilliant plans fail, not because of the plan itself, but because of some really common pitfalls during implementation. So, what are they?
This slide highlights the most common trap of all, jumping directly to tactics like ads or social media posts before having a solid strategy. A consultant's approach is to build the foundation first, always. And instead of chasing every new trend, what you could call the puppy approach, you focus your resources on a single, bold move aimed right at a competitor's weakness. Theory is great, but let's make this really tangible. We'll look at a quick example of an agribusiness using the SOSTAC framework to pivot from selling low-margin commodities to high-margin, direct-to-consumer products.
To see how this works in practice, the situation analysis identified a huge consumer trend. The objective was a very specific revenue goal. The strategy was to own the word transparent. The tactic was to use answer engine optimization, or AEO, creating content that answered consumer questions directly. The action was to empower employees to tell their own stories, and the control was tracking specific metrics to optimize everything. See, each step flows logically right from the last one.
I love this matrix because it gives you a powerful summary of the entire process from a consultant's point of view. It shows how each phase of SOSTAC is really about answering a core strategic question, from what's the game board look like, all the way to, hey, is this thing working or not? And for every single question, there's a clear, actionable next step.
Ultimately, everything we've talked about today, the analysis, the strategy, the actions, the controls, it's all in service of this one ultimate goal, described perfectly here by Peter Drucker. The entire SOSTAC framework is a scientific system, and it's designed to help you achieve such a profound level of customer understanding that your product or service becomes the obvious, inevitable choice. It just sells itself.